I'm Andrew McCrae. With me is Dave Robinson, who is the Alfalfa business manager. Dave, you've been around Alfalfa for quite a bit of your time, but talk about how you interact with the breeding side of the program there at Legacy.
Well, my role and responsibility is not just sales, but also bringing information to the breeders from around, especially North America, of what customers may be specifically looking for to address agronomic needs or something that they have found in a product that they had been selling or using that they felt, boy, if we had something that included this, or boy, I like the quality of this, but can we get extra yield, or can we get, or I'd like to have a combination of high quality along with Phantomyces race 2 resistance, for instance. And then we have those conversations. So my the blessing of being in my position is that I have regular conversations with the breeders, and both them telling me what they're doing and then the progress they're making, but also continuing to bring that conversation back from the grower or back from the customer that's saying, hey, this is something to be really helpful to me.
Give me an idea of those types of conversations, because certainly they have the knowledge of what they want to breed, but you have the knowledge of visiting with the customer. How do you balance those?
Well, I think first off, we have to have the reality that we cannot always give the customer everything that they want. But at the same time, a lot of what, well, let's go back to 2012 when I joined the company. Dave had a very, very solid breeding program, exceptionally solid, very successful. And I had actually licensed varieties from him when I was working with previous companies. And they were absolutely outstanding products, better than I was finding on the market. The breeders all the breeders have good products, but Dave had some really outstanding products. Well, a couple years into that, I started realizing that we needed maybe some additional traits. And one of the things that we were looking for, and Bruce Saransky and I had this discussion before we talked to Dave, was the fact that we really needed to see what we had for branch rooted alfalfa. And it was interesting because Dave had not really ever looked at that, but he had done a tremendous amount of work for many, many years on a Phantomyces race 2 resistance in a lot of the breeding lines. So one year we had some pretty severe winter kill, and that was the year that we were talking about the branch rooted alfalfa. The winter kill was at the research farm, so there were some plots that had just severe icing problems. So we could not use those for yield anymore. So what we did was Dave and I went out and started digging up plants. We went to a variety that claimed that they had really good, or they were advertising that they had very good branch rootedness. And then we dug up some that had very high levels of Phantomyces race 2 resistance that David had bred. And what we found was we actually had a greater percentage of branch rootedness than the advertised product did. So we then started digging up other products and found that many of the products that David had been breeding never really was paying attention to this trait, but we already had a lot of that. So it allowed then for us to start marketing the fact that we had that trait. Since then, I would suggest that a vast majority of the varieties that Dave has bred, now that Olivia is working on, will have that branch rooted trait. And it's not necessarily important for every soil type in all of North America, but it is an important trait for many of the soils. So it's just kind of an added bonus, but it was something that we were able to communicate. But David had already, on that issue, already had the solution. He just didn't know it because we weren't digging up those old plots.
Right.
So that was good.
Right. Talk about the breeding program as it relates to the rest of the industry. I've heard so much about it. So what makes it stand out compared to others?
A couple things to me really make the legacy breeding program stand out. Number one is the fact that we are independent and we don't have to have 80 or 100 varieties per year or even 30 varieties per year. What we're focusing on is making sure that when we do take a variety to cage or a selection to cage out in Idaho, we have a purpose for each and every one of those cages, whether that be potato leaf hopper, whether it be salt tolerance, or whether it be the highest yielding with the highest quality, and also then with the some different diseases that Olivia's especially been working on. Every cage has a purpose. And from what I've understood and I used to buy a lot of alfalfa from other breeders when I was in another part of the industry. And again, they were fine varieties, but I would be on station and they would have 50, 60, 70 experimental varieties. Maybe they had a purpose, maybe they didn't. But I know we're doing it with a very laser focus. This variety needs to be in this to fulfill this need. Now, some people would just say, well, you're small, so you can't do more than that. You don't have 30 employees at the research farm. And that is true. But because of that, we have to be very efficient, and we have to be as focused yeah, I guess that's the right word. We have to be as focused as possible with what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that focus is very important to us, and it gives us a uniqueness. Maybe we don't have the big numbers of different varieties coming out each year, experimental varieties, but each one has a great potential to be on the market someday and improve the return on investment that farmer really needs to have by using our alfalfas.
You mentioned that you may not have as many people working at a breeding station, but yet you have to, of course, stay competitive. So how do you continue to do that long term, to be at the top of your game when it comes to the breeding program?
It really helps to have outstanding breeders and really hard workers. and we do. We've been very blessed with the foundation that Dave has laid and Olivia's building on. And we've hired a fellow named James Farrell recently, and James is going to be a great addition to the team as well. And it just really helps us to have people that are very committed to their jobs. And frankly, it's not just a job, it's more than that. It's a passion that they have for breeding alfalfa. They're not looking for national attention. They're not looking for being out in the industry as such. They're looking at helping Legacy be the very best that we can, keeping their nose to the grindstone and really getting after it on a daily basis.
One of the things that you do is bring customers to the research and learning center there. Talk about that, why you do that, and how that perhaps makes Legacy stand out.
Well, it's pretty interesting when a farmer or a salesman or a fellow that works in an office somewhere that helps choose what varieties that he wants to have marketed, they can look at a piece of paper and say, well, I like this one, and I think it looks good. Or they're driving down the road and they're seeing this alfalfa field, and every alfalfa field looks like alfalfa. It just looks the same. And that's the perception that many people have, is that all alfalfas are created equally. So what we want to do and what we do is bring people to the research farm and let them see our products that have been bred by Legacy, and many experimentals, and some of those experimentals will not ever make the market because they don't perform quite the way we wish. So we're not hiding the fact that our breeders aren't perfect, but we also then compete against the very best products that our competitors have. And again, they have really some excellent products, but what we're trying to show is that what we have both in a Legacy bag and also our experimentals not only hold up well against those competitors, but you can see some very distinct differences in persistence. You can see differences in yield, because Dave and Olivia take yield data. We take quality data, so we have that as well. And we oftentimes can present that data to those that come to the farm and let them see. And frankly, when they walk through, there's certain varieties, competitive varieties, that you can just pick out in every single rep. Well, that one didn't persist near as well as some of the others. So it's just something that helps them to understand that not all alfalfa varieties are created equal.
What is it you're most proud of with the breeding program there at Legacy?
I'd say probably the idea that the breeding program is really focused on return on investment for the farmer. They're really focused on what is going to make the farmer the most, give him the greatest opportunity to have his greatest return on investment. So whether that be, well, the main combination would be for yield and persistence and quality. And part of that is going to be the disease package and so forth. But when you walk through our research farm, you see that the vast majority of our products will persist as good or better than any of the very best and most persistent varieties on the market, and considerably better than some that are on the market. We also will find that yield wise, we are as good or better, usually improved. I think our averages are somewhere around 5 to 7% improved yield over our competitors. And then our quality has just been a real standard for our breeding program. I think that and also just the fact that our breeders have been very persistent to continue to do the things the right way, no shortcuts. And again, I don't know if other breeding companies take shortcuts. I'm not saying they do, but I know we don't. And that's very important to make sure that, you know, when I'm out representing the company, that I know that those products have gone through a very thorough testing, and I'm there with it from I see them in the greenhouse, I see them out in the field, I see them in the breeder cages in Iowa or in Idaho. I kind of follow those babies all the way through because I need to make sure I represent those products well, but I'm confident that they've done it the right way.
I know it's a team effort, but how do you keep this breeding program at the top of its game for Legacy and in the industry?
I think the idea that because we communicate so well between myself and my sales staff, and then also even with our breeding or with our production team out in Idaho, there's a lot of communication that goes. A number of years ago, I started an alfalfa team within Legacy to make sure that there was nothing lost in communication with the group. And I know, having been part of other teams, if the communication is not very good, sometimes you can lose a focus on something. And I really wanted to do that, number one, because everybody on the team is really smarter than I am. But if I can get those smart people together and to have that communication and conversations together, and everybody gets on the same page, that really helps. And I think that is something that's very, very helpful and very solid with Legacy. And that is sometimes a challenge because we've got Idaho, Wisconsin, I'm in Indiana. We've got, so we're spread out, but that communication has been very, very important and also very solid.
Dave, I appreciate the time to talk about the Legacy Seeds breeding program.
Okay, thank you.